Hi everyone, so I thought I would make a study skills video because it's been requested by a few people who have asked for some tips and advice for studying occupational therapy, or just in general, as I worked pretty hard at university, and so some people have reached out to me, so I thought I'd put together a few thoughts and ideas of what I think helped me, and hopefully they'll help you. So these tips that I've been using the past few years, and they've helped me to do well in my academic work. So I might be recording this as I think of pieces of advice, so I might be wearing different things, but let's jump into it. Firstly, have and use a diary. So this might not work for everyone, but it was a big thing for me. It allowed me to keep track of my commitments, priorities, keep to-do lists. It also helped me with planning ahead for when I needed to start studying or start working on different assignments, as I could see weeks ahead what weekends and what time I was going to have free, and then I could start planning earlier rather than just waiting 1 week before it was due and then realizing I'm out every night with birthdays or rehearsals. And then as soon as I knew an assignment deadline or an exam, I could put that straight into my diary, and then when I'm invited to go to something in the weeks leading up to the exam or the assignment, I already have my study days marked in, and I can say yes or no to things realistically, thinking about how much time I'm going to need to study and what I am able to go to. So if you're not in the habit of using a diary, it might take some getting used to, remembering to write everything down, carry it with you as much as you can. There's some online apps available if you don't like carrying around one. I liked a hard copy, and then I also had another copy on my phone as well. It can be a good place to have to-do lists as well, and then checking it off as you go. And it really helps with group assignments if you're needing to meet up on different days. Everyone has their diary ready, can check everyone's commitments, and sometimes having an online version where you can overlay different people's commitments can be really great for group assignments. My next tip is do the required reading. So many of my friends who have told me, no, I didn't do that reading. Well, if it's required, it might come up on the exam, so please do the readings. My thoughts on recommended readings are that they are recommended. However, if you have an exam type that might be written responses where you're kind of needing to flesh out ideas, then skimming over the recommended readings, or if you have time or a genuine interest in that topic, definitely go through the recommended readings, as they can just add little tidbits of information that could allow you to get that 100% an extra, there's no such thing I don't think as bonus marks, but really help you along and help you to develop a richer idea and understanding of that topic or concept. But do the required readings. Come on. And when I do required readings, I like making notes. Usually I'm printing them out so I can then write on them and highlight, making notes as I go. So then the next time I'm reviewing the reading, I don't need to read the whole text in that much detail and focus as the first time through. I've highlighted the main parts and I'm looking at my notes, so I'm skim reading more the next few times and really focusing on what I thought was important the first few times I read through it. Some people also like to then write down a separate note and never come back to the reading, but I do like to refer and stay on the original text with my additional notes. But of course, it's up to you. My next piece of advice is to ask your lecturers and your tutors or whoever questions. Ask them early, don't leave it to the last minute where it's the night before the assignment and they're saying, I'm not answering any more emails or questions about it, you should have asked me earlier. Get in early. As soon as something doesn't make sense on the task sheet or you're just not sure, check that it hasn't been asked already. We use discussion board on Blackboard. That's another one of my tips. Make sure you're reading everyone else's questions as well on discussion board. Make sure you're checking in with your friends. Have you asked them anything? Because it might have been something you hadn't thought of yet, and it could be something that could just add to your assignment, or could be something you completely missed. Someone could have asked something that you've completely forgotten about or hadn't thought of. Could be formatting. The lecturers only specified when answering that question that they wanted 1.5 spacing. It wasn't on the task sheet, but they replied with that answer. Make sure you read everyone else's questions and get your questions in early. I think studying is very individual to you and what works for you. So one of my big things is finding what works for you. So what mode of studying? By yourself, in groups? For me, it's often a mix. I find studying alone and learning the content by myself more beneficial rather than studying with a group, because you might go at different paces, or some people might need to spend more time on a certain topic, and then it might be wasting your time, or you could be spending it on something else. But it's finding what works for you. I have friends who only group studied. That's just what works for them, and that's totally fine. So for me, it's doing that alone study, and then once I feel I have a solid grip on the content, coming in and working with others, and that could find gaps in my knowledge or anything I've misunderstood, or teaching it to other people is something that really helps me and helps to cement the topic and the concept by explaining it to other people. Highly recommend doing that. My next tip is finding where you study best. I don't really love studying in libraries, even on the silent level. People start coughing, people start sneezing. When there's heaps of people on the level, it can get quite loud to an extent. So I prefer studying at home. And then for group assignments, of course, we can study almost anywhere, but even so, loud levels of the library can make it quite distracting to focus on a group assignment. So think about that when you first meet with your group, asking where they like to study and work. And if you're new to your campus, then go try a few different places, a few different libraries, coffee shops, places outside. Find your tree. Rory Gilmore reference, her tree at Yale. Anyone get that reference? Find what works for you. If it's a different place inside your home, at your desk. I don't recommend your bed, and I'll link my tips for getting to sleep and having good night's sleep somewhere up here. The reason I don't recommend that is then that you're associating your bed with studying and that kind of thinking, and you could be kept up at night just thinking of studying as your mind has already related studying to your bed. So try and keep your studying outside of your bedroom if you can, or at least at a desk or somewhere other than your bed. So my next tip is, when considering new study techniques or tools, for example, flashcard programs such as Enki, or just making handmade flashcards, consider the amount of time it can take to prep or create the resource itself before actually using it to study. So for me, when I was in my first year of university, I spent so long making really great handmade flashcards for anatomy and probably for so many other subjects. But especially for anatomy, I had stacks upon stacks of flashcards. I would type up my notes, I'd draw, my hand was getting so sore from hand running, so I began typing, printing, cutting, then pasting, and it took me hours upon hours. And then when it came to exam time, I only had a few hours left to actually use the study cards for what the purpose I'd made them for, was to study. So consider the time and the ratio between prep and study before devoting yourself to a new study method. My next tip is get your hands on some past exam papers. So sometimes they're going to be available at our university. They're under the online library. You'll type in the course code and find them there. Sometimes they wouldn't be available, or sometimes the course curriculum might change, and so the exams there don't really fit what you were taught, or don't fit at all what you're being taught, or don't really fit what you're being taught for this semester at all. So in those cases, I like to create my own study questions. So I like to look at all the content, the learning objectives definitely, and turn those into exam questions. So then once I've turned every topic or piece of information I can into a study question, I then like to type or write them up and then cut them out. And then if I know how many questions will be on the exam, I like to then say 6, randomly pick 6, put the timer on for how long I'll have in the exam, and do a practice exam that way. If you do have access to full past papers, do them under time, and then really take your time going back through the answers and thinking about why you got something wrong, and not just learning the correct answer, but really understanding why. For vivas or oral exams, which we had a few in our course, I really recommend practicing out loud. As obvious as it sounds, I know some people don't practice out loud until they're in the room, and that can just be so much more stressful than it has to be. So I prefer practicing by myself, and then when I feel confident, practicing with others one-on-one, and then maybe in a group setting. I feel like practicing with someone else there just puts extra pressure on you. Even when you're by yourself and you feel like you know it, as soon as I get someone in my family to test me, my mind can go blank. So I really find putting that little bit of pressure on me when I'm studying and preparing can really help me in the long run when I get in that exam room. I think it's also important when you're going into exam block, which is going to be something quite regular during your university degree most likely, is to have a list of relaxing or self-care activities that you can turn to when you need a break from studying. So you're not aimlessly staring at the ceiling for 10 minutes and then coming back to studying. You have something productive that's relaxing and related to your self-care, that when you so that when you return, you're feeling more rejuvenated as possible. So for me, that's sometimes going for a walk, having a shower, watching one episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is I think 20 minutes. If we're in the library studying as a group, we like to go down and get a coffee or some lunch all together at the cafe and then come back. So that includes a walk, some social time. If you're studying as a group but still studying individually at a group table, try and take those breaks together so you are socializing. Because I notice I like to study at home and myself during exam block, and I rarely see anyone except for the exams, and I can become more of a hermit. And so we know socializing for a lot of us can really be energizing and can also be emotional support for us. So my last tip, it's better to start earlier than later. Things pop up, commitments come up. You might have a perfect study schedule and you think, I can get all of this done in 3 days. It's easier to get started early and then have lots of time where you know all the content and you can relax before the exam. It's better to have that relaxing time before than that cramming, stressed, overwhelming study session that I know most of us have at least experienced once in our lives. Start studying early. I promise it pays off. Alright guys, those are some of my studying tips. I hope these have been helpful. If you would like another lot of studying tips from me, I'd be happy to do it. Just let me know down below, and I hope you have a wonderful day full of meaningful occupations. Maybe that is studying for you. Subscribe, like, comment down below, share with a friend, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.